The air in the abandoned warehouse tasted of rust and seawater. Helena knelt on the cold concrete, the rough surface digging into her knees through the thin fabric of her dress. Her hands were bound behind her back, the zip ties cinching so tightly her fingers had gone numb. She was 8 months pregnant, the weight of the baby pressed down on her bladder, a constant, agonizing pressure across the cavernous space. Leyland Whitman, her husband, stood under a single bare bulb, his bespoke suit immaculate. Even in the filth, between them stood Roxanne Dubois, his secretary, her crimson lipstick a slash of defiance against her pale, tear-streaked face. One of the masked men holding them captive gestured with his gun toward Roxanne. Mr. Whitman, we have what we came for, time to make the trade. Leyland didn't hesitate, his voice was as cold and precise as a surgeon's scalpel. Take my wife instead. The word sliced through the silence, sharper than any blade. Helena's head snapped up, disbelief warring with a sickening, familiar certainty. Even the masked man seemed surprised. What? The deal was for the secretary. The deal has changed, Leyland said, his gaze fixed on Roxanne, a flicker of something possessive in his eyes. My secretary is essential to my business. My wife is replaceable. He turned his gaze on Helena, his eyes empty of any emotion she could recognize as human. She's yours. The antiseptic smell of the hospital was the first thing to cut through the fog of pain. Helena awoke to the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor, a dull ache radiating from her lower abdomen. The baby, her hands flew to her stomach, which felt unnervingly slack under the thin hospital blanket. A nurse bustled in, her expression a mixture of pity and professional calm. You're awake. You gave us quite a scare, Mrs. Whitman. You went into premature labor, massive hemorrhage. My baby, Helena whispered, her voice a raw croak, is my baby. He's a fighter, the nurse said, a small smile touching her lips. A boy, 5.5 pounds. He's in the NICU. But he's stable. Relief washed over her so intensely it felt like another wave of pain. She had survived. Her son had survived. The memory of the warehouse flooded back. The cold floor, the brutal kicks, Leyland's voice severing the last thread of her hope. They had beaten her, tortured her, and left her for dead. After Leyland and Roxanne were safely gone, a janitor had found her at dawn. Where is my husband? Helena asked. Though she already knew the answer, the nurse's smile faltered. He was here briefly. He settled the medical bills and left instructions for the best care. He had an urgent business meeting. Of course he did. Roxanne was safe. His world could continue turning. Margaret Whitman, Leyland's mother, arrived a few hours later. She swept into the private room, a formidable presence in a Chanel suit, her face a mask of controlled distress. Helena, she said, her voice tight with a guilt Helena knew was more for the family's image than for her. I just heard. I am so sorry. Helena simply stared at the ceiling. Are you truly sorry, Margaret? Or are you sorry this will make the papers? Margaret flinched. Don't be cruel. You know I care for you. I was the one who wanted you for Leyland, and look how that turned out, Helena said, her voice flat. He's lost his mind over that woman, Margaret admitted, sitting heavily in the chair by the bed. This is a madness that will pass. Once he comes to his senses, he will realize what a gem he has in you, a gem he was willing to trade for a piece of glass. Margaret reached out, her gloved hand hovering over Helena's. What do you want to do? I will support you. Helena finally turned to look at her mother-in-law, her eyes dry and burning. She had cried all her tears in that warehouse. You once promised me, Helena said, her voice steady. You said if I gave the Whitman family an heir, you would let me go. No questions asked. A flicker of panic crossed Margaret's face. You don't mean that. Not now. Think of the baby. I am thinking of him, Helena replied. I won't raise my son in a house where his mother is valued less than an employee. Your promise, Margaret. Can you honor it? Margaret stared at her for a long moment, seeing the unbreakable resolve in her eyes. She finally gave a slow, defeated nod. When you're well enough to leave, I will make the arrangements. Leyland sent a transfer for child support a week later. It was a staggering sum, a clear attempt to buy his peace of mind. He even sent a text message, a rare occurrence. We can discuss a formal settlement when I return from Zurich. In the 5 years they had been married, she had always replied to his messages within seconds. This time, she blocked his number. He called, his voice tight with irritation when she finally answered the landline. Helena, don't play these childish games. I am trying to be reasonable. There is nothing left to discuss, Leyland, she said calmly, and hung up. That night, he brought Roxanne to their penthouse. Helena was packing a small bag in the master bedroom when she heard them in the foyer, Roxanne's high-pitched laugh echoing off the marble floors. She stayed in the room, her heart a cold, heavy stone in her chest. Roxanne, emboldened by her new status, sashayed to the master suite's open door. She leaned against the frame, examining her nails. You're still here. I'd have thought you'd have the decency to disappear. After being handled by so many men, the smell must be all over you. I'm surprised Leyland can even stand to be in the same house. Helena looked up from her packing, her gaze so placid, so devoid of the fury Roxanne expected, that it unnerved her. She simply continued folding a sweater, as if Roxanne were nothing more than a buzzing fly. The sound of Leyland's footsteps approached. Roxanne's eyes darted toward the sound, a cruel plan forming instantly. She snatched the heavy crystal ashtray from the nightstand and, without a moment's hesitation, smashed it against her own forehead. Blood streamed down her face. She shoved the ashtray into Helena's hand just as Leyland entered the room. Roxanne collapsed onto the plush carpet, a perfect damsel in distress. Leyland, I was just trying to tell her you shouldn't smoke so much for your health, and she tried to kill me. It was a familiar, tired script. In the past, Helena would have dropped the ashtray as if it were on fire, frantically trying to explain the truth to a man who had already judged her. This time, she held onto it. She looked from Roxanne's theatrical display to Leyland's cold, unforgiving face. He didn't even ask. He simply acted. He lunged forward, shoving Helena so hard she stumbled backward, her head cracking against the corner of the oak dresser. Stars exploded behind her eyes. She slid to the floor, dazed, her gaze fixed on the crimson drops from Roxanne's wound staining the white carpet. Leyland's voice was a whip crack. Apologize to Ms. Dubois. On your knees. Helena didn't move. He yanked her to her feet, his fingers digging into her arms, and pushed her down in front of Roxanne. Apologize. Fine. She knelt. She lowered her head and brought it down hard against the marble floor once, twice. The cut on her forehead from the dresser reopened and fresh warm blood trickled down her face. Is this sincere enough for you? She asked, her voice eerily calm as she prepared to strike her head again. If not, I can continue. Stop it, Helena. Leyland's voice was raw with a sudden, unfamiliar familiar panic, he pulled her up, his hands surprisingly gentle. Are you insane? His eyes locked on her face, on the blood mingling with the network of old, faint scars that crisscrossed her forehead. His voice trembled slightly. What happened to your face? When did it get so scarred? Those scars were a map of their marriage, a thin white line from a thrown wine glass when he was angry about a business deal, a small, puckered mark from when another one of his mistresses had accidentally slammed a door in her face, and he'd told Helena to stop being so dramatic. Each mark was a story he had chosen to ignore. He stared at her forehead, his brow furrowed, as if trying to solve a puzzle. For a moment, she thought he might remember. Instead, a contemptuous sneer twisted his lips. I see, you've learned a new trick. When you can't stop me from being with other women, you resort to self-harm for pity. Pathetic. He gripped her wrist, his thumb pressing down on the bone until she winced. The pain was sharp but fleeting. The thought that this would all be over soon made it fade into nothing. After Leyland left with a fussing Roxanne, Helena went to the study. From the bottom drawer of his desk, she retrieved their only photograph together. It was from the Whitman Enterprises annual charity gala 2 years ago. She was in a simple navy gown, he in a tailored tuxedo. Even in the posed shot, the space between them was a chasm. She remembered the photographer's awkward request. Mr. Whitman, could you perhaps stand a little closer to your wife? She remembered the whispers from his colleagues. Does the CEO even like his wife? He looks like he can't stand to touch her. He had told her to delete the digital copy. She hadn't listened, printing this one out in secret. As she held the photo over the wastebasket, his voice startled her from behind. I thought you said that was your most treasured memory. You're willing to throw it away. He was leaning against the doorframe, a cigarillo dangling from his lips, an amused expression on his face. It was the same look he'd had a year ago when she'd walked into his office and found him kissing a female executive. She had slapped the woman. He had just leaned back against his desk, utterly indifferent. Go on, make a scene, he'd said. There will be another one after her. His indifference used to be her greatest fear. Now, it was her liberation. She ignored him, turning to her purse to check her passport and documents. His amusement vanished, replaced by a sudden tension. He strode across the room and seized her arm. Where are you going? There was a raw edge in his voice she'd never heard before. I'm going to visit my sister for a few days, she lied, her face a blank mask. The lie was plausible enough. He released her that night. 4th.